Hey everybody, it's time to get swifty. No, it's not really. But I did just watch the season finale of Rick and Morty season 2, finally, after it hasn't been a month since it came out. Anyway, totally irrelevant to the today's vlog, but just wanted to mention that because, I don't know, you should show me what you got. You know, what you got, you should show it to me. Anyway, sorry. Only Rick and Morty kids will get this. Okay, I'm done, I swear, I'm sorry. Today, kids, we're going to be talking about poetry and emotion and why why I tend to find that I'm able to express myself through poetry. Historically, well, not historically, but so I've been doing poetry since sophomore year of high school, ever since I did creative writing. Creative writing is also where I met my first partner. It's where I made a lot of my first friends. Creative writing in sophomore year was a pretty important class for me. Without it, I don't know that I would have gotten the sort of interest in writing that I now have. I found that poetry was a really good way for me to communicate sort of how I felt and why I felt that way, and express it in a very abstract but very concrete way at the same time. One of my favorite things about poetry is there's no hard and fast rules to it. I mean, there's no hard and fast rules to writing, really, but there are looser rules with poetry, I think, than there are with writing a short story, with writing a novel, or writing an essay or something. Blogging, that can vary too. But if you want to look professional, you'll have certain guidelines. Poetry, I mean, there's probably informal guidelines, but I've never seen them. I've never really paid them much mind, and it's never really affected me negatively. One thing that I tried to do when I first started poetry was I tried to rhyme all the time. Okay, I swear to God that wasn't on purpose, but I did try to rhyme a lot, and it made sense at the time because I was doing sonnets. Sonnets, for those who don't know, is like a 12-line poem. It has like a couplet at the end, which it rhymes. I don't remember the rest of the definition, but I think that's the main deal. It's limited to 12 lines. There's a couplet at the end. It's got some sort of symmetry going on the whole way through. Anyway, I did I don't know, a dozen of them throughout creative writing, and I also did some short stories and a novella, and and it just really fueled my interest in poetry. And then I went through a breakup in my sophomore year, and actually right before right when my sophomore year was ending, and that's where really my first emotional poetry really started. I've looked back on these poems retroactively, or in retrospect, and they're not very good. They're really way too whiny, and they're too obvious, and they're not very interesting. I'm a pretty harsh critic on myself, but I do think these poems weren't very good. But they were all about my breakup, and honestly, I wrote a lot of them. I don't know how many, but yeah, I think the later works that I did when I reflected on the breakup were more mature and more interesting. But obviously, I'm biased. I don't know. But yeah, and then after that, I had just a year of a relationship, and then having a crush on somebody in high school that really wasn't working out, and then I was also that relationship was kind of flailing and not really working out, and so that eventually ended too. It was just a mess, and I wrote a lot of poems about unrequited love. I wrote poems about other stuff too, I wrote some political poems, but I stopped doing that because the political poetry, I don't know, I like writing politics in articles. I don't like writing them in poetry. I like writing about love and depression and deeply personal things. More ideological political things just seem tacky and preachy to me, and I just don't like doing that. I don't like being that kind of poet who's a beat poet or something, or talking about the system man. I do How to Be Playing on a Jukebox by Allen Ginsberg. It's a very good poem, even though he had some questionable taste in his life, we'll say. But it's a good poem, and Rage Against the Machine covered it, and so I've actually covered it at an open mic during college. And yeah, so I mean, there's plenty of political poems that I like. I just don't think it's personally for me. I haven't tried it in a while, so I mean I could try it, but I don't see the point. I think I do articles and essays and blog posts fine about politics, and then I keep poetry a little separate about my love life or lack thereof, or depression or mental health stuff. It doesn't monopolize it, but that tends to be where I focus it. Yeah, and then senior year, of high school, again, a lot of poems about unrequited love, and like I haven't done an exhaustive review of the stuff that I did in high school, but it's just it was always a way to like express myself and not feel constrained by language. I guess I've always felt like poetry is just a very it meshes, like I said earlier, like that abstract / concrete thing where like everything I say is kind of airy and flowery, but it's also kind of like has concrete and distinct meaning for me. But like to other people, it might be like, I'm not sure what he's getting at, but I can relate to it. Or like, I know what he's going through because I've gone through that. Or I'm his friend and he's told me what this is about, so I know what it's about. Or it's for me, I know what it's about, So yeah, I think I've written about around 100 poems about a certain unrequited love that I had. It was miserable, I gotta tell you. But poetry helped. That was one of the worst situations I think I had, where I just absolutely desperately had feelings for somebody, and they did not return them. And all it was really was just unrequited love, really. But still, it gnawed at me because we were in the same school, and we were friends and all that, and so it just like it really gnawed at me, and it really but like I said, poetry, plus time, plus talking about it, plus just realizing it's okay to have these feelings, and I don't have to be upset about it anymore, has helped. And I within the last few years, finally I moved on, and I'm like, I don't have to feel sorry about this anymore. Sometimes I'll have a thought, or somebody will say their name, or like it's somebody else or whatever who shares the name. It's not a terribly common name, so when someone does say the name, or it's said, it invariably reminds me of that person. But yeah, like poetry really helped me, and it's continued to help me. I don't write poetry as consistently as I used to. Into college, I had another creative writing class, which was really helpful to me, and I'm really glad I took that class. And it helped me deal with a lot of my feelings about somebody I met in college, and then also, sort of the after effects of the unrequited love from high school. I was still going through that, and it made me process some other feelings I had about earlier breakups. College, the 1 year I was in college, honestly, was pretty transformative in a lot of emotional ways. Looking back, and the friendships I made, I reflected on that, and it was really helpful to me, and it's continued to be helpful. After college, I've repeatedly, I kind of had I'm sorry for all the false starts. I had a reputation at the open mic in Worcester that I recently stopped going to because I moved out of Worcester, of being kind of a depressing guy, or I don't know, that was my perception of myself, and I kind of just joked about it to other people. I don't know if other people had that perception, but they probably did, because most of the poetry I did was pretty sad. But I kind of agree with Steven Wilson that there's kind of a beauty in sadness. Steven Wilson, by the way, is the lead singer of the progressive rock band Porcupine Tree. He's also a solo musician too. I think there's just a kind of beauty in sadness, and like finding that beauty and like talking about it is like really important to deal with your emotions. And if you don't do that, at least for me, they become all bottled up, and it's just not very healthy. I have written poems about my most recent breakup, and I don't know that I'm going to put any of them out there, but I have put some out, or I have written quite a few actually, and I'll probably pick a few and I'll put them out there. But I think there will be some poems, before that I've written before, and then now and in the future, which I just won't put out because they're just they're not suitable for public consumption, because too much private stuff. I said this on Facebook yesterday, the day before or whatever. But I have a real problem with oversharing. I'm not really sure where the line is drawn between sharing and oversharing. But I try to, like, when I get nervous or when I get you know, when I get like this sort of, when I get this sort of, feeling in the back of my head that I should stop talking. I'll at least consider that. But yeah, I don't know. That's some of the stuff why poetry really helps me, and just if you've seen any of my videos from the open mic where I did the 5 poems for Victor, my friend Victor, who passed away this year, it was really emotional for me to be able to do that in front of people, and you can even almost hear it towards the end that I almost start, breaking up a little bit and crying, because it was really important for me to do that, to share my emotions openly, and to do that in a space where I wouldn't feel like I was judged. And that was a great thing about the open mics that I've done, at least with Worcester. College open mic wasn't quite the same, but at least with the Worcester open mic, like, it was a very judgment-free, value-free, like, place, and you could do just about whatever you wanted, and people would give you a round of applause. I know some people think that's cheap or whatever, but I mean, people were still honest too. Or at least I would give honest feedback to people if I thought they wanted it. But it was really more of a space of sharing than a space of like trying to like be a really good poet or something like that. But anyway, those are some of my thoughts. I think that's I don't have any more ideas about what I'll do for videos, but if I come up with one, I'll do another tomorrow. I'm actually going to go, I'm in Ohio right now, and I'm going to go to another part of Ohio in a few days, and then things are going to be hectic again, because I'm going to go to the Michigan Students for Liberty Conference, and then I'm going to maybe go to the Oklahoma Students for Liberty Conference, we'll see. But yeah, I relaunched my Patreon, link will be in the description if you want to give a monthly contribution. It helps me keep making these videos, write articles, book reviews, whatever. So cool. So thanks for listening as always. I'm sure I've missed out on some things. It was a very abridged history of me and poetry, but maybe I'll return to it at some point. I don't know. Anyway, have a good one.